York since 1996. I too am from the Caribbean and from the island of St. Thomas, and we got hit by both Irma and Maria. However, we're under the United States flag, so we had a little bit different help coming in after the hurricane, so to speak. So I appreciate the comments that you made in terms of the importance of the private sector participating in recovery, because we still don't have any hotel rooms and pretty much are depending on Airbnb for our tourism industry, which was completely decimated by these two storms that hit 2 weeks after each other. But how I met Nigel and my particular interest in the conversation that we're having today is that throughout the work that I've done, after finishing my training at Sloan Kettering in 1996, one of the things that I was able to achieve was I built and developed the first comprehensive cancer center in the Caribbean, which opened on the island of St. Thomas in January of 2005. And in taking that project on, one of the things that I started to confront and I saw for myself, as I was also the president of the American Cancer Society Upper Manhattan Board of Directors, was the whole issue of cancer and the burden of cancer on people from the African diaspora worldwide. And so I have my business partner here with me today, Erica Masheshi, who was the executive director of the American Cancer Society at that time, who is from Nigeria, and in our conversations together and looking at this issue globally, we looked at the fact that there is a tremendous burden of cancer on people of African ancestry throughout the diaspora in the world. And in fact, the World Health Organization has deemed cancer one of the 4 health conditions that must be addressed because of its impact in low and middle income countries and the developing nations. So in 2005, we actually made our first trip to Nigeria to meet with the president of the country as well as the Minister of Health for the entire country of Nigeria, and started this conversation to deal with this issue. And when you look at the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, there's a lot of conversation about the communicable diseases, particularly malaria, tuberculosis, and HIV/AIDS. But you know, more people die from cancer worldwide than those 3 communicable diseases put together. And in fact, cancer is the leading cause of death worldwide. Second leading cause of death worldwide after heart disease. It has a tremendous impact on the overall health of nations, and it also has a tremendous impact on the economic toll. In fact, it's something like $1.2 trillion of impact from the loss of lives as well as the loss of income from people not being able to work. So when I look at the Sustainable Development Goals, we would be remiss to not deal with the issue of cancer because of its impact, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, where the disease has really ramped up and is taking over. And in the Sustainable Development Goals, one of the issues that must be addressed is the whole issue of tobacco control. And we know that tobacco use is a leading cause of cancer death as well as heart disease. So this issue of cancer that we have decided to take on and deal with this has a direct impact to the SDGs. And now, why the private sector in dealing with this? Well, in 2005, we pretty much went at this to engage the public sector, to engage the governments of the African countries that we met with, whether it was Nigeria, whether it was Ghana, wherever we were, to deal with this issue. And basically, what we've gotten to is the government cannot do this. They do not have the capability financially of dealing with this burden that needs to be a comprehensive national approach, which they do not have, nor do they have the expertise to make this project happen. Even if the money showed up today, and we said now time to start to create this and build this, the expertise is not there. So the only way we're going to deal with this is some form of PPP, whether it's going to be concession form, build, operate, transfer, or just privatization of the healthcare industry in Africa is going to require the private sector to get this off the ground. And it is not going in the right direction. In fact, this issue is getting worse and worse over time. And without us dealing with heart disease and cancer, just looking at the communicable diseases is not going to be enough. And so from our standpoint, from our history, being on the continent and the work that we're doing, we're going to need the private sector to be engaged in this. And It makes scientific sense, it makes moral sense, but for the private sector, we're looking at an opportunity that makes huge financial sense, because you have a huge demand for something that is a huge demand for care, and there's zero supply. So I'll give you an example, just to give you numbers so that you can actually see what we're talking about. I want you to imagine that we're sitting in Lagos right now. New York City is Lagos. And for example, when Erica and I were working on building the first comprehensive cancer center in Nigeria, it was going to be in Ogun State, which would be New Jersey. I want you to imagine that the entire state of New Jersey has one CAT scan machine. And it was technology that was already 15 to 20 years old and barely worked. It had one mammogram machine for the entire state of New Jersey that barely worked from time to time. And by the way, that CAT scan machine, when we saw it, wasn't even operational at the time. There wasn't a single MRI machine. So basic services do not exist. And the country of Nigeria, I'm just going to use them as an example because they're one of the more modern countries, a population of 160 million, 180 million people right now. You
Nearly
need
200.
one linear accelerator to deliver radiation therapy for every 250,000 people. The country of Nigeria has 10 linear accelerators. The country needs 720. 10 of those linear accelerators, of them, 3 of them do not work. 5 of them just got instituted, and a big issue with delivering radiation therapy, you must have a sustainable, reliable energy source. That machine can never be down. You can never have a power outage while you're delivering it. So you can't even deliver good health care, because one of the things we deal with on the continent is we don't even have the proper energy source. There are no grids in Nigeria. The government has no way of actually delivering electricity so that you can do the work that you need to do. So even with what we're trying to do, it would create, when you talk about infrastructure, one of the things that we recognize in even developing a cancer program is that we needed to work with the private sector to come up with a reliable energy source to actually power the facilities that we would need. So I too am going to stop there, because you could get me going for a long time, because I'm very passionate about this, obviously. And so that's just to give you a little example of what we've been on the ground working on since 2005. Thank you.
Thank you.